This is Wheelbearings. I'm Dan Roth.
I'm Sam Abuel-Salmon from Navigant Research.
And I'm Rebecca Lindland from RebeccaDrives.com.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell people who I'm with. I'm with Forbes, and I'm still with Twitter because Twitter is my favorite. All right, so let's get to the cars. And so this week I was driving a BMW M850i. Sam,
and you loved it, right?
We'll just jump in with both feet. It's an impressive car, but it's a stupid car.
Why?
What's so stupid about it?
So I can't say that it's different than the original 8 Series in the sense that it's on the technological forefront. The original 8 Series was also very advanced, especially for its time. And so this car is very much like that. It's a GT, just like the 8, so it sort of stays with tradition there. It's what you'd expect from an 8 if you remember the original 8.
Did you ever drive the original 8 Series?
I did not. I wish I had.
I did.
Yeah, so that car to me was like a Bavarian Thunderbird. And
very much so. It was very much, especially compared to the last of the older, like before they did that 2-seater revival.
The
century.
The MN12.
The MN12 Thunderbirds, yeah.
Which is hilarious because the MN12 was basically Ford's copy of a 6 Series.
Exactly.
And they got it right. Way overweight, behind budget, and over budget and behind schedule. But anyway, this still is, I guess, if you want to think of the Thunderbird now that it's not here anymore, it's a harder comparison to make. But it's a GT and it's obscenely expensive, and this one is a convertible, and so I immediately like it less because I don't like convertibles.
Well, you're just wrong. I'm sorry, but you're wrong, Dan.
It is not like convertibles.
It's a great convertible, I will say. It's solid, which is impressive. Again, it's not the car's fault that I don't like it. It's me. It's my hang-up. Because it's a very solid car. It doesn't really cowl shake or anything at all, which is very impressive to me because it's a porker. It's big and it's heavy and it drives big and heavy. Although it has a fantastic twin turbo V8. What is the engine? The engine is it's a turbo 4.4 liter V8. It's got 530 something horsepower. I should pull up the summary here so I could tell you more about it. It's got X-Drive, which is a nice touch for a convertible because it makes it a car you can use all year round. The price on it, I think, was the thing that got me the most, other than it's a very sophisticated car, so it's got a steep learning curve. And some of the way BMW does stuff just aggravates me to no end. Like, it doesn't shut off. You can't shut the goddamn car off.
What do you mean you can't shut it off?
You park and you can shut the engine off, but you keep stabbing at the button and the stuff inside stays on until you lock the doors. I hate that to no end.
You mean like the accessories?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's I've actually seen the same thing on some other cars recently.
Minis do it.
Yeah, other BMWs have done it.
Yeah.
The X4 did that as well.
Mercedes does it too, and it's a quote unquote convenience. I'm like, I want to know the thing is off so that it doesn't sit in my garage and kill the battery. And it's a philosophy thing. It's, again, this is my hang up, so I can't fault the car. The car is exactly as they designed it. They did a fantastic job. It's an engineering masterpiece. It drives very well, although it's kind of big, and with the convertible, you can't really see all that well to the rear. The visibility is not great. The belt line is kind of high. But, all of my hangups are it's modern BMW stuff. The iDrive system is pretty good. The thing that got me the most was, while it drives like it should for the price. You know, it's got a lot of power. It has plenty of grip. It has different drive modes that change the character of the car in a noticeable way. It handles pretty well for something as large and as heavy as it is. It's just very, the interior doesn't feel like it's of that caliber. You know, it doesn't feel like a $127,000 car, which is what it was. Which I was like, that's a lot of dough.
But that's also, I mean, that's one area where BMW, I think, can really improve on is the interiors.
Yeah, the materials are nice, and I should say, again, like this is a blue car with an all black interior, so it gets a lot harder to judge sometimes when the materials are all black, right? Because you could do all black in synthetics, you could do all black in the nicest leather you're ever going to find, and the difference visually and to the touch may not be all that much. So, you know, some of that subtlety may be why it's getting lost on me, but I'm just looking around, I'm going, yeah, these are materials that I'd see in a 5 Series for, you know, $70,000, which is still, again, not cheap, but it doesn't strike me as the cabin of a car that was north of $100,000, north of $110,000. So the money is clearly in the fact that it's a convertible, that it's an exclusive model, and it's got a pretty well sorted powertrain that does whatever you ask of it without any complaint. You know, it's just, I wonder who buys these cars and I wonder who buys them and uses them to their full potential, I suppose. Because,
almost no one.
Yeah. Like this is a car that if I were to try to use it to even 7/10, I would scare the daylights out of myself because it's so capable. You're going to end up in trouble really, really quickly. So then it becomes overkill, beautifully done overkill. But, and I think that's sort of my criticism is we're at the point where you really can't exploit all of the talents this car has. So it becomes merely a status thing. Like, oh, you bought the very fast one.
Because you could.
Yeah, because you want to sit in traffic. And the stuff that makes it sit in traffic well is all the ADAS, which is exceptional. It's very well done. So from a driver's perspective, you know, BMW still makes a very good driver's car. It's just that the things that make a driver's car now are different than, say, when they had I don't even know what the E number was for the original 8 Series, but it was E something. You know, what made a driver's car then is different than what makes a driver's car now. But even then, that car was high tech and luxurious, and it wasn't an E30 M3. You know, it wasn't as elemental, and so there's that insulation that happens. So
it was an E31.
It was an E30. Wow, really? They did the E30 and then they did that car. Interesting. Yeah. That's a interesting order. Yeah, you know, I guess. For me, I'm trying to think of the competitor, and the most natural competitor for this car I can think of beyond a Mercedes would be a 911 because of the performance. And I would so much rather have a 911.
Yeah, except I don't think this is not targeted at the 911 buyer. The 911 buyer is not going to buy an M850. They might consider an M8 when that comes out.
Okay.
And that is coming. But I can't see, you know, somebody that's interested in a 911 going for something like an 8 Series coupe or convertible, because as you say, it's a grand touring car. It's not, the 911, while it has been incredibly civilized over the last several generations compared to old school 911s. It's not. It's not. I wouldn't call it a grand touring car. It's still a sports car.
Yeah, I'd go for the Panamera.
Well, I mean, even the Panamera.
Panamera is practical.
It's a.
This is not practical.
Yeah.
No.
Something like a Lexus LC.
Yeah.
Is much more of a competitor to this.
I would absolutely rather have the Lexus
or the Mercedes S-Class Coupe. or convertible. Those are the natural competitors to this thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe even an Aston Martin. What are we up to? DB11 now?
Oh, I would
DB11,
definitely rather have the Aston. If you're going to spend that kind of money, you can get an Aston. I mean, come on. It's just that much more exclusive. And that's the name of the game. Like, as a 4-seat convertible, it has a tiny back seat. The trunk isn't bad. The practicality doesn't really matter for this kind of car until it does. If it is actually something that you want to take your other very wealthy friends out for a toddle around town, they're not going to be comfortable. So you should just stay on the yacht. But I guess it's one of those situations of BMW. It's not you, it's me. Because really, it's a good car. It's a great convertible. I'm impressed with how solid it is.
It's well executed at what it's intended to be, but what that is not the kind of car that you want.
Well, the thing I didn't like about it was the low seating position, the limited visibility. And the convertible, again, that's my hang up. I was impressed with the fact that it doesn't seem to have that typical sacrifice that you make when you go to a convertible. It really doesn't shake. You don't feel that lack of torsional rigidity much at all, if ever. If you're looking for
Which is surprising in a car as big as an 8 Series.
Yeah, that's what I was impressed with.
It's not a small car.
Yeah, it is. It is a big car, and so I think the way it's been engineered, it's again, I called it a masterpiece, and I think it really is, because that's BMW's thing, and a lot of that is a little bit hidden beneath the fact that it's a big, expensive, fancy convertible. The way it's constructed to make it that solid is probably the real story there, and that's a little bit lost, and it's lost on you if you're just driving it and you don't realize how good it is. Luckily, we drive a lot of things, so I could get in it and go, this is actually quite impressive. The way the iDrive it has. It almost feels like the whole panel is loose, because the buttons they're like capacitive, but then you press it and the panel pivots, but the whole panel pivots versus the like an individual button. So that was a little interesting if we're gonna split hairs, but yeah, the way they've made such a sort of strong structure. They use I think they use carbon fiber reinforced plastic and aluminum and magnesium. They've learned a lot from racing and from building even more exotic stuff. I think that the i8 probably influenced this car a bit, and just that kind of way to keep the weight off and the strength up and still deliver performance. So
yeah, and a lot of those techniques, from things that they learned from doing the i8 and the i3 were incorporated into the current 7 Series and now into cars like this, with multi-material structures. So they've got steel and aluminum and magnesium and carbon fiber at various locations to give it that kind of strength and rigidity.
Yeah, it's very good. So if you want to be impressed, go check it out. It is very good at what it does. I would like it with a different color interior. I think the exterior looks great. I think the ragtop kind of ruins the lines of the car. I much prefer the coupe. But again, this is my hang up. We have learned tonight that Dan is really not a convertible guy. So let's talk about something.
Good. More for me.
Yeah, something that you're driving. Rebecca, I think you're the only one on the list with 2 cars this week. So let's jump to you, because you had the Maxima, and Sam had that not too long ago.
Yeah, I did, and I continue to be double booked on which is
such a problem.
Oh, it is. It's torture.
Gotta make up excuses to go drive.
But and it is true. I did actually. I went out on Sunday just to put some miles on the car, which was really nice to have that opportunity and that time. So so I had the 2019 Nissan Maxima Platinum Reserve. It's got a V6 engine in it, a 3.5 liter. It's CVT, and I got to tell you, I think that Nissan just does a really good CVT. This one was really nice. I mean, it was they did a really nice job with it. This particular one had front wheel drive to it. It was the base is $34,000, and as equipped, this was $46,000. So that was impressive. A few things that stood out. This is a refresh. They did some updating on the front and rear of the vehicle. It was, it's just fun to drive. It's a sedan that is, has that almost feel to that four-door sports car that Nissan claims that it is. It's very close to being that. It's not that it's a big car. It's just you feel the whole car as you drive it. But I had a lot of fun with it. The exhaust note I thought was really, really good. And it was clear that it was a nice size engine. It definitely did not feel underpowered at all. The steering was good. I liked sport mode was a lot of fun to put it in, especially, as I went through some of the twisties. There was a couple things that were a little fly in the ointment. It was cold out, so I put the heated seats on, and sometimes when in my driveway, I can't get radio stations, and as soon as I pull away from the house, it clears up, and the whatever I'm listening to, whether it's AM for traffic or ESPN for sports radio, it'll all of a sudden kick in, and so I'm expecting this to happen, but I kept hearing this buzzing noise, and I kept trying to play with the radio and fix it and get it into tune, and nothing would change. And then I realized that it was actually the fan from the heated seats.
Oh, yeah.
And Sam, I don't know if you had this, but it was so weird. The fan I've had fans from the ventilated seats, but I haven't had it from the heated seats. And I don't know if that's a function of having heated and cooled, that the fan comes on regardless.
Usually the fan, I've never had a fan come on heated seats before.
So,
and I did not notice that when I had the Maxima. It was cold when I had it, and I used the heated seats, and the fan never came. There was no fan that came on in the seat.
So what's interesting is that I just yesterday they dropped off the Mercedes GLE, and that also, I also heard the fan on the heated seat mode. And my mom actually commented on it, and well, God bless her, but she can't hear anything. So.
that's selectively. Maybe her ruse is working.
You sure it was a fan in the seat and not somewhere else?
That's why I turned it off to confirm in the Maxima in particular.
Huh. That is strange. I have not ever. I don't think I've ever experienced that a fan when the seat heater is on. Only when the ventilation is on.
Right, when the ventilation.
Even then, I've never really heard the fan. You don't typically hear the fan, because it's pretty gentle.
So you know what? This calls for an email to Stephen Oldham so we can ask him what's up with the seats.
Where I have heard sounds from the seats. This was in the Cadillac XT4 a couple of weeks ago. Was when you turn on the massage function, because the way the seats in the XT4 did the massage, it was actually using the inflatable lumbar supports. So it has like 3 bladders in there,
right?
And it was basically cycling through those, and so it would inflate them and deflate them. And as it deflated the lumbar support, it was venting off the air. You could hear it venting off and then reinflating again,
right?
But the heater itself, there's typically no moving parts of the heater. It's usually just a heating element. They just give it power, and it just heats up. There's usually no air circulation associated with it.
It was very strange. Strange.
It's a mystery. Yeah. You know what? One thing, because it was cold here too, and the thing that impressed me the most about the 850i, I forgot to mention this. It has heat like immediately. I don't know if they've got like a resistive heater in there or something, but it immediately, like legitimately within the space of one block, starts to blow heat.
Yeah, that's nice.
I was astounded. I don't know what they've done, but that's the best thing I've ever experienced.
But yeah, so this heated seat. So I have to admit that I hear the motor from ventilated seats all the time.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
Yeah. Just one other note on the Maxima. So it has this lovely diamond quilted seats that are standard on the Platinum Reserve, and they look really nice. But then they have this semi-aniline leather, and it kind of reminded me of 70s Naugahyde. And when I went to confirm how to spell Naugahyde, I found out that Naugahyde is named, do you know?
After Naugatuck.
Yes, after Naugatuck, Connecticut, where rubber was manufactured.
Uh-huh.
So that's just a little fun fact for me.
Yeah. I also found that out recently. I was like, no kidding.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So that was
You'll probably not find much Naugahyde in Naugatuck any longer. It's kind of a Tony community, isn't it?
Well, yes. So it is exactly. I made the point that nothing is made in Connecticut anymore. So this was apparently a while ago.
They make submarines there still.
So I couldn't remember. Did I talk about the Lexus NX 300 F Sport? I think I did, right?
Yeah, we talked about that.
Okay,
last
I just
time.
wanted to make sure that I had covered that one for you guys. So then I also had the Hyundai Tucson Ultimate all-wheel drive. And this has the 2.4 liter 4-cylinder in it. So I got to tell you, I mean, this was just, I liked this car, this mid-size crossover, small crossover. It was just a good vehicle. It was one of those, and it actually had a lot of really, really pleasant surprises in it, especially for the price. I mean, it bases at, this is for the Ultimate, as I said, the top of the line, $32,950. And that's just such a great price for this. It had heated and cooled seats. It had the forward collision warning, lane keep assist, blind spot monitoring, hill start assist, all these different safety features on it, all these different comforts, heated and cooled seats. It was just a really, really well-equipped vehicle. And it just behaved really well. And all around, it was just like, I was like, this is such a good vehicle, and it was such a good price. And
that's Hyundai,
right?
And they're not sending us checks. They make good cars.
They do.
Okay, so wait a minute. So you said there's $35,000 for that one.
34.
A couple of months ago, 34. And when we had the Mazda CX-5,
I know.
that was 37, and we complained bitterly about that price.
But we complained,
and it's not that much more.
Well, it is though, because I didn't get that feeling of. First of all, I felt like the Tucson was bigger than the CX-5, and maybe that's just a feel thing.
Yeah, that might be just a feel.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, this was 30. It was the freight and handling is $1,045. So the total price on this is $34,130. But I do think that, another $3,000, I didn't have the Mazda CX-5. I didn't leave with that feeling of, wow, that was just a really, really good experience.
So I wonder why that is, because the Mazda lineup tends to really charm car writers. We tend to always recommend them as, like, if you like to drive, the Mazda in whatever class you're in is going to be pleasing from behind the wheel. But for whatever reason, I'm curious as to why the Hyundai, which is a little more dull. Yeah,
I think that I unfortunately I don't have the sticker here for the CX-5, so I can do some comparisons on content also. I will say I liked the CX-5 interior better. The Tucson interior was pretty straightforward. It was that black on black, which I'm not a huge fan of, and was very almost gray feeling. Like I would have really enjoyed some more color and contrast with the interior. But Sam, to your point, I understand that. I don't know. There was something about the CX-5 again that it didn't leave me feeling like, this was really worth it. And I don't know. I think with the Hyundai, when I looked at the price, I was like, wow, you know what? That's a really good vehicle. So.
Okay. Well,
it could just be me again.
I just pulled up the Monroney from the CX-5, and actually looking at it now, the base price on the CX-5 Signature was $37,000.
I think the one you drove was like 40 something.
40 something.
It was $39,330 was the one that I had with options and delivery and everything.
And I think mine was somewhere in there as well.
Yeah. So. That is. I mean, that's $6,000. I mean, if the Tucson was 34, that's or $5,000 difference. That is significant. I think it's been a couple of years since I drove a Tucson, and I do have one coming up again in June. I agree. It was really nice. Like pretty much all modern Hyundais are. And the CX-5, I would say definitely feels more premium. Whether it's worth an extra $5,000, is debatable.
Well, I think also you start to get into a price point where you say what else is available at that price point.
Right. And at 40 grand, there's a lot out there. Even at 35 there is. But, the thing that both of them do at that price level is they're fully loaded for, the 40,000 in the case of the Mazda, or 35 in the case of the Tucson.
With the Tucson, in particular, if you're a little more judicious with the options list, you can easily get that, down, into the mid to upper 20s.
Oh, easily,
or even lower. If you go without most of the optional stuff, you can get it down in the low 20s. So
it starts at $20,950.
Yeah, so it's actually as Hyundais are, it's a really good value.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember the last time I drove a Tucson, which was a while ago now, but it was the same thing. I had the same impression that this is just really good at being really good. It was very well rounded. And the one I drove had the 1.6 liter turbo. That's not the engine that you had in yours, right? You had a different.
I had a 2.4 liter 6-speed.
Okay, so that's
cylinder.
That's the non-turbo.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested in what it's like with the bigger engine, because I think the bigger engine has less torque. I think I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
It is a less responsive engine than the 1.6 turbo.
Which is that 1.6 turbo is a great engine. It feels like it's twice its size. It's really I'm impressed by that. But it also it doesn't need it. So with the 2.4, it's a little more. It's a little slower. Still not sluggish, but I'm assuming it gets decent fuel economy too. Do you know what you were getting?
The fuel economy is not great. I ended up getting about 24. It was right there with the combine. The combined is 23, so 21 city, 26 highway. And I did quite a bit of highway driving in it, but it was just quiet. So the fuel economy is fine. I would describe it as fine, in a vehicle that size.
Fine is a ringing endorsement.
Well, and actually,
it's not, 28 or 30.
24, 25 is actually, about what you'll get in most of those compact crossovers, in that segment.
Right.
So it's not bad. It's not any better or worse than most of its competition.
Right. It's fine.
At least for, versions that, just have a straight up gasoline engine as opposed to a hybrid.
Right. It's fine. It was fine.
All right. Sam, what are you driving?
I just sent back the 2019 Ford Ranger.
Oh, how was it?
It's a mid-sized truck.
Oh.
Well, you had the Lariat trim. Isn't that like the fancy one?
It's the fancy one, which means it's the pricey one.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've had some pricey options on this week's show, so
yeah, the one I had, as you said, was the Lariat 4x4 Super Cab, which came to $42,000. all in, including delivery.
I mean, that's only a couple grand more than a Mazda CX-5. That's not too bad.
Yeah, no. Although the CX-5 feels a lot more premium inside than this thing does. Granted, you can get a Ranger for starting at $24,000. So if what you're looking for is a basic midsize pickup truck, you can get one for a pretty reasonable price. For the XL, with the steel wheels and everything. If you're not looking for the fancy stuff, it'll. You can get one much more reasonably priced than this. This one, as I said, was pretty much fully loaded with everything you can get on it. Nice chrome aluminum wheels and chrome running boards, and this one was the super cab. So as with the competition from all the other brands, including the Chevy Colorado, GMC Canyon, the Toyota Tacoma, Nissan Frontier, you can get this, in either super cab, which is just an extended cab, or a full crew cab form. When you get the super cab, it has a couple of things that look more or less like seats behind the front seats, and it has seat belts and everything. But if you're more than about 4.5 feet tall, I think Jill Ciminillo would probably be about the tallest person that could reasonably sit in the back seat of a Super Cab Ranger. Granted, the same thing applies for a Colorado or Canyon, and I'm sure for the Tacoma, if you got one of those. So really what it is an upholstered package shelf. And it worked great for the dog when I had to take her to the vet to get spayed last week. So, that was fine. The only powertrain available in the Ranger right now is the 2.3 liter EcoBoost 4-cylinder, which is a 4-cylinder turbo with direct injection. And it's got plenty of performance, 270 horsepower, 310 foot-pounds of torque. So, it's more than adequate for a truck this size. It's got Ford's 10-speed automatic transmission, auto stop start. As you start to get up into the Lariat trim level, though, it does have leather seats in it, which are they look nice and they feel good. They're comfortable and reasonably supportive. And there's leather across the top of the dashboard, but all the other surfaces in there really don't feel like a $40,000 truck.
Yeah,
it's hard plastics. In terms of the layout, the ergonomics, no complaints there. Everything was good. But it just doesn't feel like a $40,000 vehicle, in terms of the materials. Fits and everything were good. There were no sharp edges, no flashing lines, things like that. But it just, at $30,000, no problem. I would have no complaints about it. And, frankly, I would suggest that, if you're interested, in a Ranger, you're probably better off to go with like the XLT trim. Rather than the Lariat, because you're not really getting that much more, for the extra, several $1,000s for a Lariat. The other issue I had, as is the case with most of these trucks, the ride quality when it was empty could be a little on the bouncy side. It wasn't as bad as a Tacoma. The last time I drove a Tacoma a couple of years ago, I found it to be much worse than this.
Oh, the Tacoma is awful. I don't know why people love that truck. It's so uncomfortable and chintzy for its price. It's not.
But compared to a Ram 1500, which is positively plush by comparison with this thing, it does get a little bouncy until you put about 600 pounds of topsoil in the bed. And then it all smooths right out. And then it's great in that case.
So I guess what I'm struggling with is so a couple of things. In the Lariat trim, you're at the edge of what you can buy right now for the Ranger. So they've tarted up a truck that's very clearly like a mid $30,000 truck, So where you're noticing areas that aren't as good as they should be for the price, I wonder how many of the buyers who pony up for it are actually going to care. Because I've seen the same kind of shenanigans in the F series, where you look at the sticker price and then you look around and you're like, what happened?
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly why this truck exists now, why Ford decided to bring this Ranger, because this current generation midsize Ranger has actually been on sale overseas for several years already before it came back to the U.S. market. They dropped the old small Ranger back, about 2010 or so. They discontinued it, or maybe it was even earlier than that. And, they've had this larger midsize global Ranger for a while now, and they finally brought it back to the U.S. market. In part, because they saw how well, the other midsize trucks like the Tacoma, the Colorado Canyon, and even the Frontier have been selling. And, and also in part because when you look at the full-size trucks, they have continued to creep upwards in price. Back when they discontinued the old Ranger, the reason they gave for not doing the new Ranger in North America was that it wouldn't be that much more fuel efficient than an F-150, and it wouldn't really be much cheaper than an F-150.
Both of those have proven to be correct.
Right. Well, but the thing is, as the price of the F-150 has continued to climb upwards, it opened up a space now for a slightly smaller, more affordable truck, in that midsize segment. And so I think that there is a place for a truck like this. I think for the average consumer that wants a midsize truck, somebody that's not necessarily going to be doing a lot of hauling or heavy towing, I think that something like the Honda Ridgeline might actually be a better choice for them.
I think all of these trucks lose to the Ridgeline. Because the Ridgeline is that weekend warrior truck. It's a lot nicer interior wise. It's a lot more efficient. It's just as capable for probably 90% of the people who are gonna. Oh, I can't say 90%. Like, you got to think that there's going to be significant fleet buyers at some point, and I'm assuming that those trucks will be lower trim and they will be worked a lot harder. But
yeah, and if you wanted something, that's going to be, a work truck, like maybe on your farm or something like that, and you want something smaller than an F-150, going for something like the XL, the base model, at $24,000. That's actually not a bad deal because you get all the capability you're going to get in the higher trim levels at a much more affordable price point. So I think and the Ranger's got a 7,500 pound towing capacity, so you can actually do some pretty significant towing with this thing because of that engine.
Sam, how much homologating did they have to do to bring it to the States?
They did change quite a bit of, like, the interior was all new for the U.S. version.
Okay.
They changed it pretty significantly. Exterior wise, the sheet metal is pretty much stock, the same as it was. They tweaked the grille and they made some they basically did the equivalent of a mid-cycle update to it, and they did do some other changes in the suspension and tuning and things like that, and this is the first time that they've used the 2.3 liter EcoBoost in the Ranger. And most of the Rangers sold in overseas markets have diesel engines in them.
Okay.
So they did change some stuff like that, and they added features that are expected in the U.S. market. So for example, it's got Sync 3. You can get the one I had had the version with navigation in there. They added they've, as with all new Ford vehicles now, it's got Ford Pass Connect, which is their LTE telematics system in there. It's got the Copilot 360 driver assist package, so you get standard equipment. You get blind spot monitoring, lane keeping assist, automatic emergency braking, and things like that are all standard even on the XL. Those are features that were not available on the global version up until they did this revamp. So there are a lot of upgrades that were done to this, and the truck is now whereas the global one was being built in Thailand, and this one is being built here in Michigan and the Wayne assembly plant where they formerly built the Focus and C-Max.
So
All right.
it's a little disappointing to hear that the interior, after all that work, didn't really live up to your expectations.
Like I said, for if you went for the XL or XLT, I think it would be
Right.
acceptable. And it's certainly no worse than what you get from from a Tacoma. Those have similar levels of materials and finish and so on. So it's just, I think that when you're going to step up to a Lariat, a 4-wheel drive Lariat, you're looking at $36,000, plus a few options on there, which brought it up to 40 grand. At that price point, then I think it's not really up to snuff. But at the lower price levels, I think it's fine. So if what you're looking for, is a truck with some, that has some, serious towing capability, and this, that is one area where this does have a significant advantage over the something like the Ridgeline. The Ridgeline I think it's
like
either 3,500 or 5,000 pounds.
Yeah.
So you've got 7,500 pounds towing capacity, 1,700 pounds of payload capacity. So this thing, it's built the way you would expect a Ford pickup truck to be.
Yeah,
built.
no, that's serious. So you can put nearly 2,000 pounds in the bed, and you can still tow 7,500 pounds. That's pretty good. That's So if you're going to work it, it seems like it'll live up to that. I'm curious how it stacks up to, I guess it's 3 main competitors: the Tacoma, the Colorado Canyon, and the Frontier. I mean, clearly we know that the Frontier is the Frontier is ancient.
The Frontier is about 7,000 years old.
But because of that, I actually like it for the same reason as I like the Z. It's quaint in that way of like, oh, this is what cars used to be like. It's just an honest little pickup, and I like it better than the Tacoma, which has been refreshed, but God, it just sucks to sit in, and it's so expensive for, I don't know. The Tacoma it owns that market. It has a very loyal customer base that keeps coming back over and over again, but I don't like being in them. And
I haven't. I mean, it's been a couple of years since I drove the Colorado, and I haven't priced one out recently, but my guess is that comparably equipped, the Ranger would probably be a better value, especially when you start looking at things like driver assist stuff. Those are features that GM unfortunately has been rather stingy with as standard equipment. So my guess is it's probably going to be maybe a little better value than the Colorado. Although as the Colorado's been in the market for a few years now, and GM's been adding other trim levels. So they've got things like they've got a diesel engine option for one. They've got the things like the ZR2 or Z71, the off-road package, which you don't really have available on the Ranger right now. Overseas they have a Ranger Raptor right now, which they're actually this week they're doing a media drive program in Marrakesh with that. Oh, but that's not coming here.
That sounds like a great media drive, though.
Yeah.
I have to believe that Ford has seriously considered all of those, and if there's enough of a justification for offering that Ranger Raptor here, they will.
I would be shocked if at some point during the life cycle of this truck that the Raptor does not appear, or something similar to it. Maybe they reserve the Raptor name for the F-150 and they come up with something else. But just looking at the Chevy website right now, the basic Colorado 2-wheel drive extended cab work truck with 4-cylinder engine starts at $29,800. So basically $30,000. So it's a good $5,000-$6,000 more to start with than the Ranger.
And that's a naturally aspirated 4 too, right? Like that's the
2.7
liter or something.
Yeah, and it's a 2.5.
2.5.
And you can also get the 3.6 liter V6 in there.
Yeah. Which that doesn't make such a great truck engine, in my opinion.
And then if you jump up to the ZR2, the high end ZR2, with the V6 engine, it starts at 42, and then the diesel starts at 40, almost 46. So,
Wow.
it's definitely a better value than the Colorado.
$46,000 for a Colorado with a diesel?
Yeah.
Who the hell is that for?
That's the ZR2. That's the off-road package. So that's basically their equivalent of a Ranger Raptor. And so that's a trim level that you can't. There isn't really an equivalent of in the Ranger lineup in North America right now. But even the base price is significantly higher. But that ZR2 is pretty impressive. They've got these remote reservoir dampers on there from Multimatic, I think.
Yeah, I think
Multimatic.
You're right. Yeah.
And they've done a lot of other pretty interesting stuff to that truck. So,
well, I mean, I will be really, really curious to try out the Ranger when I have a chance to drive when it hasn't made it to my driveway yet. Although I do get to check out the Gladiator next week. They're bringing it to New England and giving us the little dog and pony show. So I'll be curious there because that is another sort of competitor, I think, to the Ranger in some ways. It's a little bit more of a different thing, but it's a mid-sized pickup, kinda.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Sorta.
It's long. I'll be curious to hear what you think about the Gladiator because it's definitely long. And I will say it does have 4 or 5 distinct passenger comfort levels. So I think that's one thing that's different than how you've described the Ranger. Is just there's absolutely a full-on back seat. But the Gladiator it was a lot longer than I was expecting it to be. It's not just a 4-door Wrangler without the top.
Right. Well, you can also get the Ranger as a crew cab with proper back seats.
Okay.
So if you need to carry 5 people, then you definitely want to get the crew cab. And just messing around here in the Chevy website, there is actually also a base version of the Colorado that I missed here. That
the WT?
For some reason, no, the WT was the one I mentioned that starts at 26.
Oh, okay.
But there's also a base version underneath that starts at 22.4. But again, that's with the 2.5 liter naturally aspirated, it's only 200 horsepower.
Yeah, that's like
the workman's version of it,
right? That's like the rubber mat and the radio delete.
That's the base version.
2-wheel drive only.
Yeah, 2-wheel drive. Just the base extended cab, and none of the driver assist features that you get standard on a Ranger.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've had that was an interesting, diverse garage this week. Let's move on to some topics. We were talking before the show started, and Sam, you wrote a story for Forbes this week about Ford getting into offering more connected services, and it almost seems like they're very keen to meet customers where they are, and I think that's sort of the same sort of common thread to the event, Rebecca, that maybe you can talk about a little bit, that you attended this week. Also sort of affiliated with Ford with Joy Filatico from Lincoln. So, but Sam, there's a lot in this this first story that you wrote about the connected services from Ford. Yeah,
so Ford has been a relative latecomer to putting cellular connectivity in their vehicles. GM started it with OnStar back in 1996, and most other manufacturers have been offering some degree of cellular telematics in their vehicles over the years, and increasingly it's becoming standard equipment. And within the next 2 or 3 years, it's going to become pretty much universal on almost everything, almost every new vehicle in North America, and including on Ford. Ford for a long time, for a better part of a decade, they relied on a bring your own device strategy with Sync, where they let people bring their phones and mobile devices in and just connect them and use that for the connectivity in the car. But obviously that has limitations because it only works when you're in the car with your device and it's connected. Once you leave the car and take your phone with you, your car is no longer connected. And so that limits what you can do with it. And, when one of the things when Jim Hackett took over as CEO, and I'm sure this is actually a decision that was made, before he took over as CEO, but, one of the things that was announced after that was when they talked about their plan going forward was that he said by the end of 2019, 100% of Ford and Lincoln vehicles in North America would be equipped with cellular data connections, with LTE connections, and they're well on their way to doing that. And one of the things that they've launched this week, to leverage that. Again, it's a feature that a couple of other automakers, GM and Volvo, already have, but they're adding Key by Amazon functionality with the Ford Pass Connect system, which means that if you have an Amazon package coming, instead of having a delivery driver leave it out in the open on your front porch, or sending it to an Amazon locker somewhere, where you might have to make a diversion on your way home from work to pick it up, you can actually have it delivered right to the trunk of your vehicle or to the cargo area of your vehicle. And you can use the data connection in the car to remotely unlock the car, one time. When the delivery driver gets there, they can drop the package off. They'll take a picture of it in the car, send you a picture, so you can see that, yes, the package was delivered, and then they close it up and they're on their way to deliver the next package. And like I said, Cadillac or GM launched this last year. With I think with most of their models that have OnStar, and then Volvo also launched it in 2018, and I'm sure we'll be seeing other manufacturers doing this over the next year or two. But it's kind of a neat feature.
I think it's a little desperate.
What? Why do you say it's desperate?
Look, they're offering they'll come out and service the car. They're partnering with what is it, Spiffy Rub-a-Dub or whatever, so you can get a car wash.
They're trying to improve the customer experience, and also they're trying to find new potential revenue streams.
And also I think there's a certain amount of emotional attachment to a company that helps you out. Like, as a single person who has a lot of stuff to do and not necessarily a lot of people to help me out with, it's really nice, the idea that they're going to come to my house for an oil change, or that Amazon package is going to appear in my car.
And that nobody's going to wander off with it, and, see it sitting there on your porch and just say, hey,
right. And so
look around, there's nobody looking, pick it up and walk away.
And maybe I'm just really simple, but there is a sense of loyalty to some extent to a company that makes my life easier. that right. does these kinds of that first of all is thoughtful in terms of saying, what are some pressure points for people that are busy or travel a lot or just have a lot on their plate. And these are some really nice emotional solutions that go beyond making a car just a car. And especially, some of the Lincoln and Ford, I think are very consciously trying to appeal to women. And I think they're doing a pretty good job of it.
And frankly, Amazon last year launched their Key service, that would allow delivery drivers to get access to your house, instead of leaving it on the porch, to actually, if you have an August smart lock on your house, they could unlock the door, drop the package inside, and then close the door again. I'd feel a lot more, if I wasn't somebody who worked at home and didn't have a need for something like that, I would feel much more comfortable with having somebody, drop a package in the trunk of my car than to actually have access to my house. Yes.
Especially because pets too. For me, I wouldn't want Linus and Lucy to get out, and you wouldn't want Daisy to.
And it's also, depending on where you work, it may actually be more convenient or just more available to have them drop a package in your trunk if you work in a city versus living in the suburbs where there may be fewer available drivers to get there. It's not. I mean, I say it kind of in jest that it's the desperation. Because I think
I mean it's certainly it's a sign of living in a first world country. The fact that you have to think about where to have your packages delivered, clearly is a sign of rampant consumerism.
I don't know if I've told you this,
but that said, if you're going to do it, you might as well make it reduce the friction.
I don't know if I may have mentioned this before, but when I moved back from Saudi Arabia, I had such an addiction to Amazon because I went from, if I needed to pick up something at the store, it involved getting a taxi driver to, arranging the time, dealing with prayer time, like where they close all the stores. Like it was just always such a hassle. Like there was nothing relaxing about going shopping in Riyadh. And the idea that things would magically appear at my doorstep was just like the best thing ever. So
yeah, that's true. And I think honestly, a lot of what you're seeing with these sort of this premium level of personalized service, I think you're right that it does make you feel more warm and fuzzy toward that company.
Mm-hmm.
And they've learned from, like the Lexus experience. If you're a Lexus customer, they take good care of you.
Mm-hmm.
They'll come pick your car up for service and leave you with a loaner.
Yeah.
And then they'll drop it back off when it's done. So you don't have to drive to the dealership. They'll wash it and detail it. It's like all those
and that's another thing that that Ford is offering. That they've got this whole API, application programming interface available with Ford Pass that allows service providers to create various services that connect into that. To leverage, get information about where your car is, and if necessary, to be able to notify you and have the car unlocked. So one of the other things that they announced is deals with several mobile car wash services, and these mobile car wash services have been around for a while, but this allows them, and they're working with a company called Sparkle, another one called Rub-a-Dub, and there's a third one that I can't think of right now. That they will come, they come with a truck, and they will do a wash of your car. And if you want interior detailing, then you can unlock the car for them remotely so they can get in, clean the interior for you. And then when you come out of your office, your car's all nice and shiny and sparkly. And, you don't have to make any diversions to go to a car wash, and you don't have to sit around and wait. If you're getting your car detailed, it can all get done, while you're off doing other stuff, or it can be done in your driveway.
Right. And it's saving you time, and it's accomplishing a task that you don't have to do. And
right, and it's all enabled by this connectivity that's in the car, because they can know exactly where your car's at. And go directly to it and take care of all this.
They know where you are.
Well,
and then they're going to sell that
to
the insurance companies and whoever else wants to buy it, and they're going to find another revenue stream.
So this is the thing. As part of the work that I do as an analyst, we actually just published a new connected vehicles report that just came out today as we're recording this. And I've talked to all these companies, and at least their official policy, the official policy of every automaker I've talked to, with the exception of Tesla, is that any data related to your vehicle belongs to you. It doesn't, the automaker, before they're allowed to share it with any other third party, whether it's an insurance company or anybody else, you have to explicitly opt in and give permission for that information to be shared. So, yes, because your car has GPS and it's connected, it is possible for people to find out where you are, which is why I drive a 29-year-old Miata.
Which is distinctive enough that people who see it know where you are.
But then again, I also usually have my phone in my pocket while I'm driving it, so I haven't really gained anything because I can be tracked that way.
Yeah, no, I get it. And
this is unfortunately one of the issues of modern life. If you don't want to be tracked, if you want to be off the grid, you do have to give up a lot of the conveniences that we've come to rely on.
Yeah. And me personally, I would like to make that choice. When it's embedded into the modem in your car, you don't necessarily have that choice. And the policy is,
well, actually, you do have the choice. I mean, it's built into the car, but you also have the choice to turn it off. You don't have to, you don't have to opt into that.
Well,
service.
there's no telling whether you can't necessarily shut that modem off, and so it's going to just be whacking towers as you go by them. So
yeah.
The policy.
So does your phone.
Yes, absolutely. Your phone does too. But you can shut your phone off and wrap it in foil and lead and put it. Just
maybe you should wrap your car in foil,
or you can go buy an old Ranger.
Right, but no, like I guess the point I'm trying to make is, the policy as stated is only as good as as good as they honor it, like
right, and this applies to every company in every industry. It's not just automakers.
And unfortunately, we've seen enough malfeasance, not necessarily by automakers, of which there are plenty of examples, but of tech companies more so, where the data, it's hoovered up and it's not even considered that it's yours. It's just something that is sold off as another revenue stream, or it's sold off as another revenue stream directly in contrast to, like, 180 degrees opposed to their actual stated kind of policies. So, trust has really been eroded, and that's where I'm at. Is I don't know that I can trust.
And at least to that degree, all but one automaker, their official policy is that the data belongs to the vehicle owner, and they are stewards of the data, and they're not going to share it with anybody without your express permission.
Yeah.
Who is the one that
I guess that's. Until that is proven wrong, that's the assumption we have to operate under.
Who is the one that doesn't apply that? Tesla. Oh, of course.
an automaker is like, that's a loose sort of term for them.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to that later.
But I actually was really interested in the event that you were talking about, Rebecca, because it's another way for automakers to kind of, like I said.
Well, before we dive into that, there's one more thing I wanted to add. Right. I was at a Ford an event at the Ford Customer Experience Operations Center in Dearborn yesterday, and a couple other things that they announced is their Ford Pass Rewards system. So it's a loyalty program when you get service at Ford dealers and things like that. That's launching now, and then also so you can basically get equivalent of cash back that you can spend on future service or accessories or other stuff. And then the other thing that they're piloting right now is Ford Mobile Service. So when you need an oil change or tire rotation or other basic services, simple services, they're working with 5 dealers in 5 states: California, Texas, Illinois. A couple others that I can't think of off the top of my head right now, or New Jersey is one, where they've equipped vans, with parts and tools and other stuff. They can come out to you and do an oil change and a tire rotation right in your driveway. So they've got an extraction pump. They just stick it down so they don't have to jack up the car. They just stick it right down the dipstick hole, suck all the oil out. Then they can take off the oil pan. They've got a storage tank in the van, and they'll take care of all that stuff on site for you. So all the basic services, and then go on and do the next one. And again, like with the Amazon deliveries, you don't even have to be there. You can provide them with access to the vehicle to do the service, wherever the vehicle is. That's great.
Because that's one of the hassles. I like it as a bonding experience with the car, but I don't always have time, or it's raining or whatever, and it's just easier to let some other poor schmuck deal with it. And they're probably quicker at it than I am. As much as an oil change isn't really all that slow of a thing, that's that kind of thing is going to make a difference in the ownership experience. It just makes it makes it easier to keep keep the car. Or easier to just maintain, have the upkeep, and you avoid going to the dealer, which nobody likes to do. As nice as dealers can be, where they've all had to upgrade their sort of in-dealer experience with coffee and whatever. Still, you got to go burn time there. So if they can come and take care of you in your parking lot, that's great.
All right, let's get on to Rebecca's event.
Your event, Rebecca, where they're meeting buyers where they are, but kind of differently.
Yes. So this was an event at NYU at their main campus in New York City, and it was actually hosted by Ford, and it's called Breaking the Glass Ceiling. And the one of the main attendees there was Joy Falotico, who is the president of Lincoln Motor Company and the chief marketing officer for Ford. What was interesting about this event was that who else she was on stage with. So the moderator was Gina Rodriguez, who actually went to NYU, graduated from there, and is an actress, director. I think she's best known for Jane the Virgin. I've actually never seen her in something, but she was absolutely hilarious. She's just incredibly funny, very clever woman. But the other people that were on stage was Kelly Edwards, who is she's an African-American host of a Travel Channel show called Mysterious Islands. And I believe she is the only African-American host of a Travel Channel network, a show, as well as being the only African-American female one. And then there was another woman, Patricia Valoy, who is a civil engineer. She was kind of there to represent the STEM part of women breaking through the glass ceiling. Ellen Miles, who is an SVP of intersectional marketing at Sony Pictures, and then Raquel Wilson, who I guess is quite well known. She is the executive editor of Out magazine and is a transgender African American woman. And what was kind of crazy was, these 4 women with very diverse backgrounds. The engineer, Patricia Valoy, is actually Hispanic, and I believe she's quoted a stat where 2% of engineering students are Hispanic women. And so, these are women that are really at the ends of the spectrum. And then you had Joy, who is a Midwestern, white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed executive for Ford for 30 years. And it was just the dichotomy was pretty intense in some ways. But what struck me was just that Ford would represent these women from not only very diverse backgrounds, but from very liberal and very left-leaning backgrounds. And I'm not talking about politically so much as these are the types of buyers that I feel like General Motors often shies away from. They're not one to necessarily step out. And I know, people that have worked at GM tried to get them to be more involved in a more diverse community, whether it's LGBTQ plus, or just doing more activities around women. It was impressive, I thought, to see Lincoln in this environment, because General Motors is always so careful to protect what they call the pickup truck buyer, who is somehow going to be offended by this, by perceived support of these kinds of groups. So it was just very interesting to see Lincoln, and I applaud them for it. I think it was great to see Joy up there, and to see Ford representing this women's group in front of I would say there was probably 800 to 900 college students, basically, that were there. I felt very old, although I wasn't the oldest person there.
Yeah, I mean,
well, I think I need to take a little issue with what you said about GM. I think GM has done a lot of stuff, a lot of programs, with the LGBTQ community. I know I'm blanking on his name right now.
Joe Lamralia.
Joe. Has done a lot of stuff, and and also on the West Coast, they've done quite a few programs.
He also had to fight very, very hard to get this done, and maybe that happened at Ford as well. But and Joe's left General Motors now, but there was just, I guess I know Joe very well, and I know the struggles that he often had internally getting things done. They did, General Motors, it's not that they haven't done anything, and I don't mean to imply that at all. It was just, I guess the main thing is I just want to applaud Ford for being out there, for being willing to support this kind of event, to be in front of a group of women that wouldn't necessarily, I mean, I'm not saying they're considering buying a Ford now, but I thought it was great to have Joy up there, to have the industry represented in front of young women, and have somebody like Joy there representing both Lincoln and Ford and the automotive industry.
Well, and it's not the first time Ford has done this kind of thing. They a few years ago did a video series with Gina Davis called "She's Got Drive." So they're this time around they're plucking sort of stories, unexpected stories of breaking the glass ceiling, obviously. So they've been at it for a little while, and I think it's another smart move, and it's another area we're going to have to see all automakers kind of embrace is that typical buyer that you picture in your head is this, like the suburban dwelling middle class person, and there's as we're seeing tradition shift away from like sedans, right? We're also seeing tradition shift away from that sort of standard buyer of a certain age. Like they're all shapes and sizes. And as the business sort of tightens up, although we've seen lots of sales volume, I feel like every car maker is really bracing for the downturn because it hasn't turned down in a while. And we've had a few really, really good years, and they're all kind of just holding their breath because something's going to happen. And so trying to speak to different groups and make sure that your brand is the one that has the same kind of loyalty that, say, Subaru or Mini do, because those are brands that really have connected with their buyers, and their buyers are loyal, and it's a part of their lifestyle, and it's like the Subaru buyer, they do outdoor stuff, and the Subaru really cultivates that image, and they do a lot of messaging around that, even when there's like to take your dog to work day or something, they'll have something special for that.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of one part of it. And I think the other part of it is their workforce, looking for more diverse voices in their workforce to help them make a better product, or a product that is more relevant, and we're seeing this in the design of cars. Women bring a different perspective to the design and use of the car, and that's something that is kind of important, especially given the amount of purchase decisions that are driven by
more than half of them.
Exactly.
Well, and I will say, from and I don't mean to be to say that General Motors.
All hang out.
Well, I don't mean to say that General Motors doesn't do anything with a diverse community, because they do. Cadillac had done some things with Broadway, Tonight We Dare and stuff. So there's things that they have done, and I think maybe it's just my exposure to them has been more limited. I'm not a member of that community, and so I don't get invited to those kinds of things. But I don't know. I think that in some ways, what was cool about how I related so well to this was the fact that it was all women up there. It was women in these, I know obviously I'm of an extreme minority in a male dominated industry and such. And so I think it was just, for me, it was nice to be able to relate to women that they are the only one of this or the only one of that, because sometimes I'm the only woman on a press drive, things like that, although it certainly has gotten a lot better in the last couple of years. But one of the things that General Motors, when they were developing the Lambda platform and the 7-seat, the GMC Acadia, the Chevy Traverse and such, it was heavily engineered by women. And there were things that they did to make the vehicles more comfortable, specifically for women drivers. And it really shows in those types of vehicles. So I think that, getting that diversity of thought and getting that input from all different attitudes, all different uses, all different lifestyles, really, I think is key to a successful vehicle.
Well, I look forward to the day that we don't have to excitedly proclaim like the first this or the only that, for like
it's true.
It should this stuff should just be the way it is. It should just be normal. We shouldn't have to rely on these kinds of efforts. Unfortunately, that's not the case today, and it probably won't be for a long time. But whatever we can do to move things in the right direction, I definitely applaud that.
Yeah. And so I wanted to give kudos to Ford for the event because it was really well done.
Yeah. I mean, you got to go find the people to buy the cars.
Yes, exactly.
And buyers now look different than they used to. So I think that's great.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next thing we wanted to talk about. Or have we exhausted it? What's your appetite?
Well, I wanted to talk to Sam briefly. The Tesla article on Mr. Wang's death with Autopilot. I just thought that was I appreciated your article on that, Sam.
Yeah. So for those that haven't read it, earlier this week, the family of Walter Wang filed a wrongful death suit against Tesla. Actually, I think it may have been filed a couple of weeks ago, but at any rate, they have filed a wrongful death suit against Tesla. And Walter Wang was the driver of a Model X that crashed in Mountain View, California, last March of 2018, when the car was on autopilot, and it slammed into the center barrier of the highway, the concrete center barrier, and ripped the front end of the vehicle off, and the battery ignited, and caught fire. And he was severely injured and pronounced dead at the hospital. And the reason why I wrote this article, I think, as anybody who's listened to me for any length of time knows, there are lots of issues with Tesla Autopilot, and I think that, Tesla and Elon Musk need to be held accountable, for the way that they have promoted Autopilot and even, for selling their full self-driving package on cars, for the last several years without actually having a product to offer. I think the idea of charging customers $5,000 for a feature that may or may not ever exist, to me, that smacks of fraud.
Well, the SEC tends to agree too.
Yeah, well, yeah, but the SEC has no power over that thing. I mean, that's something the Federal Trade Commission should have gone after a long time ago. But that's a separate issue. But I think that Tesla and Musk should definitely be held to account for the failings of Autopilot. My issue is with this particular case. The driver of this vehicle, Walter Wang, knew that there were issues with it, and in fact had complained to Tesla multiple times and had the vehicle into the Tesla service center on multiple occasions before the fatal crash, to complain about this very problem. In fact, he had experienced the exact same problem that led to this crash, where it didn't properly follow the lane and instead veered towards the road, the highway 101 near Mountain View splits at this location, and there's it goes off on part of the road goes off in a different direction, and so he slammed into the concrete barrier. And he had experienced the vehicle veering towards his barrier on multiple occasions.
Did you say it was
prior to the fatal
seven
accident.
times? Because this was his commute,
At least,
right? This was his standard commute.
Yeah, it was his daily commute. He was an engineer at Apple, working in Cupertino, and he was on his way to work, the morning of the crash, and he had taken it to the dealer or to the service center, and they said there was nothing they could fix about it. He'd complained to Tesla. And yet he continued to use this feature, even though he knew that it didn't work. And I'm not a lawyer. None of us are. None of the three of us are. But to me, it seems that, this is a classic case of, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. That people need to take responsibility. If they know that something doesn't work, stop using it. Do not use the feature if you know that there's a risk that it's going to crash.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's
and worse than that, on this particular occasion, the data from the car showed that he was getting alerts from the car to put his hands back on the wheel and take control before, in the moments leading up to the crash, and he ignored those alerts.
Right.
Yeah. So,
from some of the responses on Twitter that I saw, particularly from a gentleman named Jim McPherson, goes by the handle Safe Self Drive. He's actually a lawyer, and he explained that the product liability law in California, which I guess despite the fact that that Wang knew of the issue and did not respond or continued to use the function, Tesla is still responsible for the failure of the system.
Because you have to, as the producer of that system, you have to reasonably imagine it being misused and prevent from it.
And as an engineer, when I was working as an engineer, that was something we had to think about. We had to think about the ways that people would likely misuse ABS or stability control systems and test for that and try to make sure that the system worked properly in those scenarios.
Yeah, I mean that
was something I did as an engineer.
That's why Super Cruise will park itself.
Right. But I regardless of what the law is, I think people need to think about this. And and in fact, today I was coming back from a meeting, and I was driving down the highway, and as I glanced in my mirror, I saw a Tesla Model 3 coming up on my left in the left the left lane, and as it passed me, I glanced over and I looked at the driver.
Sleeping.
And the driver was sitting there. No, he wasn't sleeping. He was looking down at his phone, had both hands tapping away on his phone, texting on his phone, no hands on the wheel, not watching the road at all, which is totally contradictory to the instructions that are, in the Tesla operating manual.
but I mean, so are the statements made by Elon Musk. And
I know. And that's why, that's my argument why I think I agree that Musk needs to be held to account for this sort of stuff, because despite Tesla's official position being that the driver is responsible, the driver is in control, and you have to keep your hands on the wheel, he himself has been filmed in TV interviews demonstrating autopilot with his not looking at the road and his hands not on the wheel.
It's that parlor trick that I think creates, and I think that goes back to the psychology of why, even though the thing clearly had some confusion, the system couldn't handle certain situations, and it would malfunction or whatever you want to call it. It would make the wrong decision. There's a certain hopefulness among owners, especially of Tesla's like, nope, this is great. It works really well. It's full self-driving because it's been built that way, even when it's not. So I feel like it's one of those things, like they're early adopters. They're already tolerant of the warts that the system may have because they believe in the technology, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just you have to be realistic and not be hopeful to the point that, like, yes, eventually, after 30 times of it messing up and trying to drive into this barrier, they're going to fix it, and it's not going to do that anymore. Like, maybe you should retain control, and not put yourself at risk unnecessary. What I'm saying? Like, it's that, well, it should work, so I'm going to put it in that mode, and that's the mode that I want to work. But you can't will it to happen.
Well, we can at least warn our listeners, to be more vigilant when they're out there driving. Regardless of what systems you're using, whether you're driving a Tesla or any other vehicle with any of these driver assist features, these are driver assist features. These are not autonomous cars.
It's not driver substitute. It's driver assist.
Right. Yeah. You are still responsible. And you have to pay attention to the road and what the car is doing.
Well, so here's my question though. You are responsible, but the systems make it really easy to be irresponsible. This M850i that I'm driving has very good ADAS. It'll keep itself in the lane. It'll let me take my hand off the wheel, and for an extended period, like it'll do its thing, and then it has little yellow indicator lights that light up, and if I don't put my hand back on the wheel, it'll beep at me. But it takes what feels like an eternity for that to happen, because I was playing with it to see how long I could go without having any kind of sort of input, letting the system just do its thing. It's alarming how long it'll just do its thing before it actually warns you, hey, you've got to touch the wheel again.
Yeah, it is. And it's very easy to become complacent, and to stop paying attention and, to become overconfident in the performance of these systems.
But you know what? At the same time, though, like if you're on the road, I was going to use an example of a racetrack, but not very many people get that opportunity. So I'll use a more generic indicator. But so if you're on your road, if you are on your commute and you come to a curve and you consistently lose your back end on that curve because you go too fast, eventually you slow down. Right?
You go faster. You get all four wheels involved.
You get better tires.
But no, joking aside, yes, you learn. Right? It's like the stove is hot, don't touch the stove.
Exactly. And so the idea that this system failed him repeatedly, just at the exact same point. It wasn't like it failed him at different points along his commute. It failed him at the same point 7 times. And as you said, Sam, it's like, how, I don't understand how you trust a system that does that. You follow, you spin out, if you don't point to the tree through the corkscrew at Laguna Seca, you make that mistake one time because you're screwed. And that's the kind of stuff that I when I was reading your article, which was excellent, I just was struck. That really stuck out to me as something that there was just such blind, naive trust in this system that it's tragic. It's absolutely tragic. And I think we always need to remember that these things are they're driver assist and not driver substitute.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So, watch the road. There are no autonomous vehicles no self-driving vehicles on the road today that you can buy. So if you are driving a vehicle that you own, remember, it's not autonomous. You are responsible. You have to drive it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, do your best to scare yourself. The harder you drive, the more engaged you're going to be. No, this is terrible advice. I should just stop. All right. Well, I think we have consumed another podcast for this week. Unless there's any questions, I didn't see any. So,
there was one in email.
Oh, okay.
Let me find it real quick here. I actually had it open earlier. It was from Andy. He had some EV charging confusion. It says, apologize if I'm being obtuse here, but I don't understand the terminology of electric car charging. The specs for EV charging stations seem to be routinely expressed in kilowatts. So a Tesla supercharger might be rated 135 kilowatts. But I guess I expect the important metric to be a rate of some sort, that as in kilowatts per hour. Is this not how it works? What am I missing here? Actually, kilowatts include a time component. Kilowatts is a unit of power. So essentially, what it is how much energy are you putting? Are you expending per unit of time? Is what it amounts to, just like horsepower. And so, if you're charging at 135 kilowatts, you're gonna be getting a certain amount of energy, per minute, being pumped into your battery. And we also have a unit called kilowatt hours, which is how much, which is kind of the opposite of that, which is taking out, for every hour, how many kilowatts are you expending or consuming, or how much energy is stored. So that's a unit of capacity of, the total energy capacity, so you can put out, a certain number of kilowatts for a certain number of hours, so a 90 kilowatt hour battery could put out 90 kilowatts for 1 hour or 45 kilowatts for 2 hours, that sort of thing. So the unit of kilowatts already has time incorporated into that, and I think it's, if I recall correctly, the definition is something like Newton meters per minute or something, I think. But I'll have to look it up. Kilowatt definition. Let's see. It is. A kilowatt is equal to 1,000 watts. It's the equivalent of 1,000 joules of energy for 1 second is 1 kilowatt. So that's where the time component is already incorporated into a kilowatt. So physics lesson done for today.
Isn't a never mind. I'm not even going to show off my my ignorance. I thought it was like the amount of time it takes a horse to raise a thing 1 foot. So